Was Andrew Tate's war room a part of something sinister? His private subscription service claimed to be building up men, but what was he building them into? Was Andrew Tate creating his own private army? Andrew Tate has been in the news a lot over the years, but never more than in recent years.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate.
For Andrew Tate.
Divisive influence has to be said. Andrew Tate.
The allegations of assault and abuse, followed by his arrest for organized crime in Romania, has led many to look deeper into his various ventures. What they are finding is shocking and disturbing in many cases. Tate's original claim to fame was a successful career in kickboxing. With multiple championships to his name, no one can argue the man was a skilled fighter. This popularity naturally led to interviewers and fans alike wanting to get to know the man on a more personal level. What sort of philosophies and opinions carried a man to such heights? When he was given the chance, Andrew Tate was more than willing to share his thoughts on success, determination, and all the normal things athletes like to talk about. What no one was expecting, however, were Tate's opinions on manhood, womanhood, and dominance. His confidence soared far beyond a normal successful athlete to a point of spectacle, and as his career in fighting was winding down, he soon discovered he had a new opportunity available to him: inspirational speaking. Obviously, he was far from your average motivational speaker. Tony Robbins' style of gentle positivity was nowhere to be found in Tate's methodology. In fact, from his aggressive style and words, it could be assumed Andrew Tate was not a big fan of the Tony Robbins school of thought at all. Tate preaches a life of dominance, aggression, and some would argue selfishness. He claims that the average man today is weak and has been convinced that being weak is a good thing. The former kickboxing champ shouted his message of how to reclaim your true manhood to anyone who would listen, and it spread like wildfire. He quickly outshined his own success as a fighter with how popular he became online as a motivational icon. Much of what he proclaimed can be seen as positive, at least in the early years. He inspired young men to be active, take care of their bodies, and maintain their health. He showed them how treating your body like a temple can yield great dividends. However, mixed in with the message of health and fitness was a much more sinister plan. Slowly but surely, Tate infused his teachings with violent aggression. He began by telling young men that their manhood had been taken from them and they must strive to take it back. Then he started saying that they were being kept down by a society that wanted them to remain weak, unmanly, and frustrated. Why? He rarely, if ever, would explain why society wanted this. But to his audience, it did not matter. They believed him. Many of his target audience felt unmanly, they felt they were owed something, and they felt frustrated and had no outlet available to them. Andrew Tate masterfully tailored his teachings to speak to the anger and angst that can be found in many young men. The desire to be strong is easily molded into the desire to dominate. The desire to be sexually active can easily be twisted into thinking women owe their bodies to men. Tate would back up his teachings with examples from the ancient world. He would often cite how ancient cultures lorded over their women and how strong, violent men rose to power. What he left out was the devastation left behind by this man and their practices. Not that it would have mattered to his audience. They gobbled up every word he said, becoming more and more upset by the injustices Tate claimed the world had dealt to them. They wanted something to fight against, and Tate had given them the perfect enemy. He had propped up a vague system and sense of society that was just barely specific enough to be rallied against. With his definition of the enemy, Tate left himself enough room to aim his vitriol at anyone who opposed him or disagreed with him. He was able to neatly fit all his critics into the system, bolstering his position and teachings with every person who disagreed. In 2019, the former fighter decided it was time to take his online presence to the next level. He had primarily operated on social media and had developed a sizable following across several platforms. His polarizing opinions and personality kept him trending everywhere he went. His followers reposted his every word, and his haters followed him just to keep up with his latest outrage. Regardless of how they felt about him though, every person who clicked on his content made him more and more money. Tate was ready for the next step. The War Room was launched with tremendous fanfare that year. As a part of his Cobra Tate website, it benefited from his existing fan base right from the start. But it was immediately clear that War Room was meant for a specific kind of man. Tate marketed it as a personal coaching and teaching opportunity, where for the low price of $8,000, Andrew Tate himself would help you achieve your peak performance and regain the manhood that was stolen from you. But was that all it was? Did Andrew Tate really just want to help men be better men, or did he have an ulterior motive? Judging from his personal life, it seems safe to say he may have had much bigger and much darker plans. The former kickboxing champion was building himself an army, not just an online army of fans. It seems he was building an army that would be loyal through any circumstances, that would rise up and actually do his bidding. Recently, a former team member of the War Room has revealed chat logs and insights into what went on behind the scenes with Tate's team. On top of the exorbitant prices Tate was charging for War Room and his related courses, he was gathering as much information on his followers as possible. Not only were the hundreds of War Room subscribers giving him their hard-earned money, they were unwittingly helping them gain more control over them. Tate clearly realized the easiest way to maintain control over his soldiers was to make them think he was teaching them to control others. He preached an even more extreme version of his public message in this now public chat logs, telling his followers to treat women like slaves and to train them with Pavlovian methods. With every lesson, he endeared this man to himself, establishing himself as a guru of manhood, and in return, he demanded to be treated like a god. He became remarkably good at drowning out his detractors. He began pressuring people in leadership at social media companies to allow him to influence his image. When they would not cooperate, he began sicking his dogs on them, encouraging his followers to show up at their houses unannounced and intimidate them. The cult-like methods he employed made his followers unbelievably loyal, but they also started to attract the watchful eye of national investigative groups in the US and Britain, like the FBI. When Tate moved to Romania, he made it no secret that he chose to live there for two reasons. First, he was unlikely to be charged with a sex crime, and second, he found the authorities in Eastern Europe were far easier to bribe. What was his plan? What was he building? To answer that, we turn to the cult classic Fight Club. Andrew Tate's methods and actions are eerily similar to those of Tyler Durden. He preached the same message and garnered the same kind of following. Young, impressionable men in need of a role model flocked to him. Tate, just like Durden, manipulated the trust placed in him and radicalized his audience. They publicly defended him from any would-be critics. The fighter had transitioned himself into a leader with an enormous army of human shields. Any attempt to get to Tate would now be guaranteed to have collateral damage or blowback of some kind. This may have been his intention all along. It is obvious that Andrew Tate wanted to capitalize on his popularity and build a fortune on the backs of people he could exploit. However, considering how early he utilized cult-like tactics, he may have planned to create an army of hyper-masculine acolytes from the beginning. When you add that to Tate's stated intention of bribing governmental authorities, as well as building a compound in Romania to hide from any prying eyes, it raises some unnerving questions. Not only do we have to wonder what Tate was planning, what was he already doing there, and now that he is on house arrest, is he once again capable of acting on his plans? Andrew Tate may indeed be capable of enacting a Project Mayhem type of plot while on house arrest. Now that he has direct access to his audience once again, he may be inclined to enact some level of vengeance for being investigated and incarcerated. Tate has the means and the motive for obtaining what he would see as justified revenge, and his history of sending his followers out to intimidate his enemies would indicate that he may have something of that kind up his sleeve. Who are Tate's biggest enemies right now? Well, considering he was unable to bribe the Romanian government into letting him go, they would be first on the list. Allegations of operating an organized crime ring have been levied at Tate, but the details of these allegations have not been made public, since the investigation is still ongoing. However, it is easy to see where the idea that he could be running a crime ring comes from. If he was able to convince his followers to intimidate people at their homes, what else has he asked them to do? Has he had them commit robberies, sabotaged his enemies in some way? Have they possibly even been convinced to commit worse crimes, such as murder? While the evidence is not public, the possibility, motive, and means exist. Eastern Europe is a hotbed of illegal activity, especially right now. With Russia exerting their control in various ways throughout the region, honest news is hard to come by. There are plenty of human and drug trafficking rings galore, unsolved murder sprees, and racketeering schemes that cross international lines. It is not hard to imagine Andrew Tate being behind some of them. His words and actions in the past indicate he is more than capable. The Romanian government seems to agree with this line of thinking, as the charges brought against Tate are heavy hitters. Publicly, they have charged him with organized crime, human trafficking, and various sex crimes. They would not have charged him and had him arrested if they had no evidence. Even though Tate paints Romania as a lawless, Wild West type of place, they operate on a system of laws and rules, just like every other developed country. While we may not know the details, it is more than obvious that Andrew Tate has been up to some very nefarious deeds. Whatever Tate has convinced his acolytes to commit in his name, and whatever other crimes he has committed, it all comes back to his private interactions in the war room. His ability to control his followers increased exponentially with the advent of the war room service. All the schemes and plots Andrew Tate has in the works stem from his work with his most dedicated followers there. The war room was where the former fighter's dreams of developing a devoted army became a reality. Now that he has them under his thumb, there is no telling what he may have them do.